you have to equally be good at your financial system as you are at fixing cars.
Welcome back to another episode of the Collision Vision driven by Auto Body News. As always, I'm your host, Cole Strandberg, and today we're diving into a topic that underpins everything you do in your shop, your finances. Joining me is Bill Park, former multi-shop owner and founder of Crunchit Financial Services, a company dedicated to helping collision repair businesses gain the financial insights they need to succeed. Bill learned firsthand how a lack of good financial data can hold an operator back. And today, he's here to explain why better financial visibility is the foundation for smarter operations, sustainable growth, and better decision making. As I often say, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that rings especially true in the financial component of your business. Enjoy the show. This episode is brought to you by Hunter Engineering. Are you considering getting into the ADAS calibration business? If so, consider visiting Hunter Engineering's centralized ADAS information hub learning resource and take advantage of a large library of easy-to-digest videos, insightful articles, interactive training modules, education tools, and much more, covering all aspects of the business of ADAS calibration. The ADAS calibration market is large and it's getting larger. So when you're ready to get going, your road to ADAS success begins with Hunter. Visit hunter.com/ADAS-hub to learn more. That's hunter.com/ADAS-hub. Enjoy the show. Bill, thank you so much for joining us here on the Collision Vision.
Hey, glad to be here, Cole. Thanks for asking.
Man, looking forward to an awesome conversation. It's always a pleasure to connect with you, whether it be in person or virtually, and today is no exception. I'm really looking forward to it. Let's start with setting the stage a little bit. I think you have a really unique background and unique story compared to many in the industry. Talk to me about your background in your own words.
Well, it's a bit of a windy road, Cole, and I mean, I don't want to bore everybody on.
Hey, windy roads are the best kind of roads for driving or backgrounds. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true. It's a little more exciting, that's for sure. So, yeah, I'll give you the quick, 30-year run. Painted my first car when I was 15 years old. It's one of those tough dad stories. Like, if you want to drive something nice, you better figure it out yourself. And so I guess I had a knack for it. So, I mean, I owned in my high school years, I owned 6 cars. So
wow,
fixed them up, bought them, sold them, amped up on the way out, as I got older with nicer vehicles and whatnot. And then I went to college. I was going to be a orthopedic surgeon was my goal. And so I took a long stretch in college because I was not a very good student, and managed to get my degree in molecular biology after 7 years, decided not to do the whole doctor thing. And while I was at the University of Arizona, which is where I graduated, I actually worked at the garage motor pool. So I worked from 3 in the afternoon to 11 at night, fixing and painting cars for the U of A garage. So I continued to build my craft, and then graduated, couldn't get a job. Went to apply for a job at a dealership body shop. I didn't even get an interview. And so I said, you know what, I'm just going to take their business. So I started my own little shop and grew it. And over the last 30 years, I've had 13 locations. I've sold 4 different times. And my last 2 shops I sold last November in Colorado. So awesome. Here we are. And
awesome.
We started Crunchit Financial Services in October of 23.
I love it. We're going to dive into Crunchit, but before we do, obviously based in our conversations, pre-show calls and otherwise, Crunchit was inspired by challenges that you faced as an operator in the collision repair industry and gaps that you saw. What financial challenges did you face as an owner that impacted your ability to run the business maybe as effectively as you wanted to?
I struggled for a long time early on for sure. I mean, literally, I would have stacks of file folders on the top of my desk at the month end and going through them, trying to finalize them and realizing every single month that I was just leaving money on the table and I just couldn't keep up with it because I had to do it all myself. And I had this mindset back then that I couldn't afford, proper education or representation, although I went to college, but that's a whole different animal. But yeah, I couldn't afford to hire somebody to do that work for me. And that was a big mistake. And I was really fortunate that I was actually selling a boat, and the boat I sold it to was actually a CPA and an attorney. Knew nothing about boating, and he said, "Hey, Bill, I know nothing about boating, but I want to do something with my family, and can you help me understand how to use a boat?" And I said, "Certainly." So we'd go out on the boat with his family, and I teach him, and then he would start teaching me about financial stuff and accounting, and took me under his wing and really kind of educated me. Unfortunately, he had a short life. He had a brain aneurysm and passed only 7 years after knowing him. Mm-hmm. But I did get a kickstart. But even after that, I still continued to struggle. And, maybe it's hard-headedness. Maybe it's I want to control a lot of things, do it myself, save money. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I really wasn't saving much money. So as I got a little bit more size of my organization, I had no choice but to bring people in. And that's when I really started to realize that if we have a system similar to how we have a system for fixing cars, we need to have a financial system. And so I started working on developing that financial system, and it's paid off over the last couple of decades.
Awesome. Man, with a degree in molecular biology, I don't think we have a shortness of brain here. You don't need to comment on that one way or another. But cool to realize kind of where those shortfalls were and do what it takes to address those. I want to talk about Crunchit here in just a second, but what specific challenges do you see that might be a little bit different here in the collision repair industry? And secondarily, why do you feel that so many shop owners treat finance and accounting as a bit of an afterthought or a cost center rather than a driver of success and something that really tees you up to build a business the right way?
I really don't know, Cole. I mean, it's it's the $1 million question. And I talk to a lot of people, even our existing customers. I really try to get into it. Why are you a customer of us? How did you make that switch? Right. And the common theme is frustration and year-end tax preparation and feeling they're overpaying for taxes and not being prepared. And a lot of folks that we deal with are in 20 groups. So they're actually, they're required to have clean financials to go into their 20 group meetings and have a really quality financial discussion and tie it back into operations, tie it back into the culture, and then just bringing all that together in this package. And they struggle with it. And so their ability to leverage the horsepower of all those people is diminished. So that's probably been a big shift. And that's where we kind of got most of our customers, is in that group of people.
Makes total sense. Now, give it to us straight. What does Crunchit do exactly here today?
Well, the short answer is we provide a runway for perfect financials. So at the end of the day, we can provide full service bookkeeping, tax advisory, and CFO level services specifically for body shops. We don't work with anybody else. Our team is very well versed, lots of deep domain experience within CCC1. We can do training. We got the gamut figured out specifically for shops. So that's really what we do. But we also have an a la carte solution too. And we understand that it's a journey. Like, this is a journey to get there. It's work. It's real change of behavior. It's a mindset change. It's training requirements. It's really getting that business owner's mindset around that you have to equally be good at your financial system as you are at fixing cars. So we offer that the entry point of cleaning up and syncing CCC1 to QuickBooks, training, and then if you want to pick up and do your own daily books, great, go do that. At least you know you're starting right. And then if you want to then move into a more sort of we service and do that for you, and then we can get into deeper analytics and so on and so forth. So
awesome. Super helpful to set the stage. We talked a bit about it in the pre-show call, where even in my experience, going from a family owned and operated business to a private equity backed business, the mindset around financial measurement and the finance component within a business shifted in such a stark way. I think under the family business, we always viewed, frankly, the finance and accounting function as a cost center. It's not something that's going to make us any more money. And maybe to the top line, that's true. But to the bottom line, we have a very different answer. Whereas you look at the private equity universe across our industry and beyond, and they put so many resources behind that finance component. Talk to me about why that is and why sophisticated businesses really care about that function.
Well, I think in the context of private equity, which you can apply that if you think about your own individual shop. Like I've always viewed my business as a family office. Like that's my goal is I want to have my own family office, and I treat it that way, whether it's really small today and maybe down the road it's got some sizable assets. The goal is, though, you have to behave, you got to play like a pro, all the time. So in looking at the pros, if you look at private equity, those are some smart folks over there. I mean, they know what they're doing. And I'll give you a sort of a body shop example of how beneficial having that level of integration and oversight in your finances. And if you don't mind, I'll share a specific example of our shops in Colorado. So we had a pretty sizable hailstorm there, and we had a contract with a fleet provider. We had 155 Dodge Ram pickups that got hit with hail. Every one of them needed a hood, right? So in a hail event, oftentimes back orders come pretty quickly. Roofs, hoods, moldings, and then all of a sudden you're stuck, right? When you got back order parts, people want to get their cars fixed. You can't finish them, right? So I said, you know what? I'm going to buy 150 hoods. That's a lot of money, though. I mean, you're going to write the check for 150
Sure.
hoods. So I called up, the manager, the CEO Pamela at Crunchit, and I said, hey, I need you to run numbers. We're going to buy 150 hoods. How's that going to affect my cash flow over the next 6 months? And also, we expect WIP to go up. So what happens when WIP goes up? Cash gets drained. You could have a $250,000 drain on cash in a hail event, like in 3 weeks, right? So we went through the analysis, and she said, no, we're sitting pretty good. You can do that. And I was able to negotiate 3 more points on the deal, buy all the hoods, and I was able to get those cars fixed in 6 weeks. So if I didn't have that intelligence around the finances, I could have really put my company at risk, right? I could have taken a gamble, which most entrepreneurs do, and I've done that many times before. And I've been sitting there wondering, how am I going to pay my bills, right? So, but we don't wonder anymore. We don't make decisions that we can't afford to make because we know exactly how that's going to happen. I think when you look at that private equity, they're the same way. They have allocation of capital, they have top line revenues, they have a 5-7 year runway. So they're going to map all that out and look at those financial dynamics along the way, including CapEx, growth, human resources. And if you don't have that level of financial forecasting and auditing and management, good luck with that.
Right on. I say this quote from my mentor all the time here on the Collision Vision, but I think it rings especially true here. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. You need those insights. You need some sort of quantitative guidelines and a quantitative understanding within your business to really make some of those big decisions. Now, I think the hail example is a great example of some one-offs, sticking more down the middle with just normal day-to-day operations, business as is. From your perspective, how does understanding your numbers improve, I guess, not just profitability, but also operational efficiency and allow you to make some of the normal day-to-day decisions on what's right for your business? Maybe should I expand? should I scale things back? Like how, talk to me just in general, pontificate on that if you would.
Yeah, I think about it goes down to modeling. And so how do you model something? Because that's really, it's like you and I, we can have a conversation about expanding. Let's say you and I are partners and we own a body shop. And then we're sitting there and sales are good, profit's good, we can expand and we can say, yeah, we can go out and finance this and do that. And we'll get shop number 2 and revenue will be X. And well, we can probably get a good sense of that, right? And we can get excited about it and we can say, yeah, let's do it. But really, you really need to model those kind of situations. And I'm not saying just for growth. I mean, even day to day. And I just put out an article recently on LinkedIn, and I talked about, a 4% increase in gross profit typically will yield a 50% increase in net. Okay. So, and I put all the numbers in there, right? So if you actually have your CCC1, your QuickBooks synced well, and you're doing daily transaction reviews, okay, that means that every transaction, every single day are validated, that they're going into the right chart of accounts, and that you don't have any missing items, that your credit memos, your receipts, your invoices, RO related, non-RO related, reoccurring, everything is booked daily. I mean, you reconcile daily, okay? That's the key. When you try to remember something you did 3 weeks ago and you got to find an invoice, what does that feel like? It's a nightmare. And what does it do to your staff? Stress level goes through the roof. I don't remember what I did 3 weeks ago. I know we got the part. I can't find the invoice. I got to call the vendor. The vendor doesn't call me back. You try to email somebody. It's 5 days to get some piece of document, right? Yeah. That just has a huge disruption in the business. So I'm kind of squirreling a little bit, but going back to this modeling piece is, I think that's the real critical thing, is that if you look at, okay, over the next 12 months, I want to take my gross profit from 39 to 43. Okay. How do I do that? 1 quarter at a time. Well, my parts vendors, I'm getting all I can get there. I've negotiated the best deal I can get. All right. Paint material profitability. I think there's some room there, right? How do we do that? So I'm going to engage my vendor and we're going to put a weekly review in place. Their person's going to come by, or twice a month, or whatever that frequency is that you want to do. And I think we got a little bit of margin there we can work on. All right, perfect. All right, let's look at labor. How am I allocating labor to my technicians? Now, do I just give a tech all the work, or do I have an R&I? Can I deleverage that cost of labor by specializing the work in the repair center, right? So R&I technicians versus like a structural technician, right? So there's that. And then you can look at any sublet. Can you do anything in-house at sublet? Really digging into those revenue, cost of goods categories, finding that 1% change, right? Focus on that 90 days. Great. Then the next 90 to the next 90. I think every shop out there could do a 4% increase in gross profit if they just did that.
Man, we could have an entire conversation, an episode on just that, and I think we should. But we'll do that another time. I think it ties in beautifully, and I want to continue down that path here today on some more specific examples on kind of that thought process. Before I do, though, kind of an overarching theme. We have a lot of business owners listening here on the Collision Vision. We have a lot of management and executives within the large national consolidators, single stores, regional MSOs, and everything in between. You've gotten exposure to all walks of life in this industry. You've worked with some of the large national consolidators. Those guys focus really heavily on finance and obviously make changes to their operation based on some of those feedback insights. What lessons can independent shops take from how MSOs, the large national guys, operate their business?
I think I might be a little controversial here.
Ooh, here we go.
All right. So, well, I think the lesson is that having a financial system that actually is measuring the things that you can control. Okay. And I think where the MSOs maybe get this wrong is they don't, they don't really, I don't think they are thoughtful enough around what their people can actually control at the center level, and then giving them the tools and training to actually be effective at it. I think there's a big gap there, right? So this is where the advantage of the small, maybe 1 to 5 shop owner is there. And I was that person, had the most I've ever had at one time was 5. And, I could keep tracks of the 5 pretty deeply. And I concentrated my efforts with my managers on the 100% of what they can control, nothing else. If they couldn't control it, I didn't manage it. I didn't measure it. I didn't do any of those things, right? Those other things out of their control, I did behind the scenes of myself. Okay. So I think that is a big gap in our industry. And we talk about measurement, and I totally agree with that, but there's only really a few things that if once you get beyond one shop, if you're the owner in your one shop, I guess you can control everything, right? But can you?
Right.
That's the question, really.
Exactly right. And what limitations come with that? So a great segue into, I want to talk a little bit about the folks listening who have a foundation and they want to grow. Maybe they have 1 store, they want to get to 3, they have 2 stores, they want to get to 5. For a shop like that looking to grow, how do you kind of envision them feeling comfortable with their financial foundation being ready for that?
Ask the question one more time.
Yeah. So for shops who are maybe a single store who are looking to grow, what does a strong financial foundation look like for them, where you feel financially speaking, systems speaking, they are ready to grow and expand?
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, they need to have perfect financials. I mean, literally, they should be able to, as an example, they should be able to close their year end within 30 days. And prior to that, in the last quarter, they should already understand what their year end is going to look like. They should already have their tax planning in place, and they should already understand their capital allocation for the next year, and then have a plan starting January to execute on that. If they're not really at that level, then they're not ready to grow. And then you got to do the modeling as well. So what's the downside risk? Of course, that's super important. And then designing your business, in my mind, to have a 25 to 30% drawdown. You should be able to weather a 25 to 30% drawdown at any given time. And if you haven't modeled that and you don't have the cash reserves or a plan, whether it's even using, you can use debt financing to do that if you get a line of credit, and that's okay. I mean, as long as you got cash flow to support it and that's a part of your plan, there's nothing wrong with that. Companies do that all the time. Big companies do that. Like, they got gazillion dollars of lines of credits for that purpose. So it's not a bad thing. So, but the difference is they understand what that line of credit's for. They understand how to use it, and they understand how to weather the storm through using it. So I don't know if that helps explain that or not.
100%. And you open up a unique addition to that question, and that is, a lot of small business owners view debt as just a bad word. You mentioned it doesn't have to be. It can be a very powerful tool, whether that's via a traditional loan, whether that's via a line of credit. How should businesses think about debt as they look to grow and expand their operations?
I think if you're running a business and you're doing $1.5 million or more in revenue, you should absolutely have your business structured in a way that the bank looks at you as they want your business. And that means your financials are perfect. That means that you are demonstrating that you are lendable, and you should have a line of credit. You don't have to use it, but you should use it. Why not? You can go out and use your line of credit to buy bulk 3M products, or you could do all kinds of things with a line of credit and get a favorable discounts because of, using economies of scale, and then just pay it off. You don't have to carry it, right? But exercise that tool, and then, in the event that there's a drawdown, which I think the industry is kind of feeling a drawdown now, right? Then they can have peace of mind, right? And that's really, really important because it's not going to last forever.
Sure.
It's just like the stock market. We're going to have probably a 40% drawdown. It's going to happen. There's no doubt in my mind. It's just a matter of when.
Yep. No question. I've that's something that is constantly, I think, at the top of folks' minds across entrepreneurs in multiple industries. Talk to me. I'm a big believer in KPIs, or key performance indicators, from a finance and operations perspective. What metrics and KPIs should owners be monitoring day in, day out, week in, week out, to understand how their business is performing?
I think WIP is probably the most important thing on a day-to-day shop operations, to manage WIP and scheduling, because those things drive speed, and speed matters no matter what it is. When you go into a restaurant and you sit down, what do you want to happen when you sit down in a restaurant? What's the first thing that you're looking for?
Someone to come help you.
Yeah. Okay. And then what? And probably bring you a glass of water or something, or ask you what you want to drink, right?
Yep.
So if you sit there and you haven't been asked that question or brought you a glass of water within probably a minute, what's your level of service do you feel you're going to get moving forward?
Yeah, not a great start, right?
So that speed is everything, especially everything has to be instant. I mean, I ordered a book last night and it came this morning. I mean, it's just amazing, right? So that my expectation is super high. So I think that WIP scheduling drives speed. I think that that's probably the single most important KPI from an operational standpoint. I also think that when you then move that into your financial side of it, looking at your gross profit by revenue category and understanding your pay structures and incentives, I think that's really critical. And then understanding that needle on how to actually use where incentives actually work. And I think this is where a lot of business owners get incentives wrong. And there's a really good book by Daniel Pink that I learned this from years ago called Drive. And it's the intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, around compensation. And what really resonated with me back then is, like, if there's not a clear line of sight through an incentive, the incentive is going to fail. So what I mean by that is flat rate technicians have a clear line of sight. And I'm not saying that this is the best pay structure, by the way, but it is an example of incentives. Is a technician knows that if I do X amount of more hours, I'm going to get X amount of more pay. It's very clear, right? There's no cloudiness in there whatsoever. But then you've got your estimator. Your estimator, well, he'll make a little bit more money if he sells X amount of dollars and he has this CSI and he has this return thing, all these numbers that he has no control over, most of them, right? That's a deflator. So I think that, there really needs to be a re-engineering of our roles in our industry, what they do, how we train them, and how we pay them.
I like it. Preach, man. Makes total sense to me. I think that's a super helpful answer. And I feel like you've sprinkled some really actionable insights and thoughts throughout our conversation so far, but I really want to start moving toward landing the plane, toward giving listeners actionable steps that they can take to improve their business. So to set the stage for that, for someone who is listening here, who might be overwhelmed by the financial side of their business, by monitoring the numbers, what's the first step they can take toward improvement and moving in the right direction?
I think they need to think about their financial system like fixing cars, and that's kind of what we do in our business. They should blueprint their financial system, so end to end, like do first principles review on how paper flows in their business, who does what, and then find out the gaps. Right, build that repair plan for your financial system, detailed, and at least I know that if I do these 25 things, then at the end of that, I'm going to be right on that road to perfect financials, right? I think that is an absolute must. And we do that. We do a comprehensive assessment. We charge for that comprehensive assessment. We go through a deep dive in CCC configuration, roles, parts code tables, labor categories, line item mapping, chart of accounts reviews, align what that individual shop owner wants to track and measure, and how much control they have over the things that they're trying to measure. We try to make it thoughtful and concise, right? So, and then we turn that over to them and say, okay, here's your roadmap. You can self-serve. You can hire outside other services to fix this stuff. You can do whatever you want, but at least now you've got a plan. And if it takes you a year to implement it, no problem.
Sure.
And a year from now, you're going to be better.
Yep. You're going to thank yourself you started a year ago, 1 year from now.
Absolutely.
If that ends up being the case. No, makes total sense. For shops, even on the smaller end, what kinds of, to get started and to kind of strip it down to the basics, what kind of tools and processes should these shops be using to start gaining these insights and starting to get some control over the financial side of their business?
Well, the tools are already there. If they're using, and I just use CCC1 because it's the most popular, and it
Sure.
could be in any management system. So estimating management system, the most important thing is configuring that to move into your accounting system, QuickBooks. And I think QuickBooks is probably the easiest, most used in the industry anyways. And they should be on QuickBooks Online. Get rid of desktop, in my opinion. Intuit is putting all their energy and resources into online, and it makes sense online. No updates, no messing around. Just, you always have it in the cloud, easy to look at on your phone if you need to. So move into QuickBooks Online, configure your management system to it. And then at that point, it's really sort of hands-on stuff. You really got to have somebody in your location that's paying attention to every transaction every day and making sure it's put in the right place. Now, you're going to get 80% there through your configuration, but you're still going to have, we're human beings. We make mistakes, right? We enter an invoice incorrectly. We miscategorize it incorrectly. We get lazy in the estimatics, right? Because estimate's king. Whatever line item you put in there flows over. So if you start manually typing line because you're too lazy to look in the parts code table, and your parts code table has been configured right, well, guess what's going to happen? That's going to go in aftermarket parts. So yep. There's really that. It's like you said in the beginning, it's the mindset shift that has to happen, and understanding that it's just like getting fit. It's like exercise. It sucks in the beginning,
Yep. Getting financially fit within your business. It's very similar. Just like with 1 year from now, you're going to thank yourself you went to the gym today, a year ago. Just like you're going to thank yourself in your business, you started working on this painful exercise to revitalize your financials. And it's a long process, but it's well worthwhile, no question. Long-term returns. One of the more profound conversations I had, I think, in my understanding of the highest levels of the finance role, the CFO, which most companies out there do not have a CFO in the collision repair space, nor should they until they hit a certain pretty darn established size. But that role and that function is much more about the impact, taking it from measuring to managing and making decisions at the highest levels that are going to impact a business. So how does one move from just tracking those numbers to measuring to actually using them to guide daily decisions or managing?
I think they need somebody to help them with that. You know, you you need to find the experts in the end that have experience in this industry, right? They need to understand every level of all the levers and how they move numbers in this business. And that's the challenge, right? The CPAs out there are lazy. They don't understand the business. All they care about is cash basis accounting for filing. They don't they argue about accrual, why you have accrual and those kind of things. It's just a stupid conversation. But if somebody really wants that, they gotta have to connect with somebody industry related, understands the business well, understands finances well, that can actually, mentor them and be that sort of pseudo CFO. And it's really all about strategy, right? That's what a CFO does.
Sure.
They're really talking about what strategies can we deploy based on our metrics, our behavior, and our goals. So you really have to align those things together in order at that specific repair center's goals. If their goal is to just have a nice steady growth and learn how to create a wealth strategy and a legacy for a future generation, great. Let's do that. There's a lot of strategies out there that can do that well. I wrote an article a few months ago where, there's so many favorable tax deferred opportunities out there where you can sock away, husband and wife can sock away 60 grand a year at 8% over 10 years. It's $1.8 million. 10 years. So there you go. It's 10 years of 60 grand a year you're going to have to put away and commit to. But like the gym example, 10 years later, you're going to say, holy crap, I'm glad I started 10 years ago. And 10 years is not that long. $1.8 million, that's a chunk of change.
Yes, it is. Yes,
So,
it is.
I mean, I think that my advice to shop owners is stop thinking like you can't afford to do this, because you can't afford not to do this. The money will be there. Good business practices, clean financials, and making money. That's your goal. You quit hiding your money. You don't have to hide your money. The tax code favors profit. When you hit a profit level, and a rule of thumb is like if you're making over 250K profit, the likelihood of you having to pay any substantial taxes almost goes to zero. Because there's so many strategies out there to use to keep your money. Now, you may not be able to actually use it right today, and that's another problem. We all want it today. Well, fine. If you want your cash today, then you're going to pay taxes on that. But if you can keep your lifestyle in check, then you can plan 10, 20, 30 years out, you're going to be sitting really nicely, and you're going to be thanking yourself and patting yourself on the back, right? So
absolutely, man. A huge misconception there, I think, is we can't afford to get our finances in order. And I think you nailed it right on the head. You can't afford not to. It's so important for the health and future success of your business. It has a very clear ROI. And I appreciate you taking the time today to kind of walk us through what exactly that looks like. I think it's been super helpful. I want to start to land the plane here. I want to include a couple links in the show notes. You mentioned the book Drive by Daniel Pink. I'm going to include a link to that for folks who want to check that out. You also mentioned a couple posts on LinkedIn or articles or otherwise. If you could load me up with some links, I'll be sure to incorporate those in the show notes as well. And before we part ways, for folks who want to connect with you and learn more about Crunchit, where can they do that?
www.crunchitfs.com. So crunchitfinancialservices.com, but it's just FS in the URL.
Yeah. Perfect, man.
You can book
that. And you're active on LinkedIn too.
Yeah. Yeah. On LinkedIn too. Absolutely. Yeah. And you can book a discovery call with me. I do all the discovery calls myself, and I'll spend as much time on the phone with you as possible and see if there's a good fit. I just want to help people get there. And if we can be a part of that, we're happy to be a part of that. If we're a part of you, jumping on the journey and doing it yourself, will help you get there too.
Awesome. Bill Park, thank you so much for your time, sir. A pleasure as always.
Thank you, Cole. I appreciate you. Good job out here. We love all these vision casts. It's just wonderful. Appreciate you doing that.
That is a wrap for today's episode here on the Collision Vision, driven by Auto Body News. A big thank you to Bill Park for sharing his story and showing us how strong financial management isn't just about the numbers. It's about running a better business, building a stronger team, and creating opportunities to grow. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow the Collision Vision wherever you enjoy your podcast. And do me a favor, leave us a review and share it with a friend of yours in the industry who might find this type of information valuable. And if you're ready to start measuring and managing your shop's performance more effectively, be sure to check out Crunchit and connect with Bill. He's a great resource across our industry. As always, on behalf of the Auto Body News team and myself, thank you for coming along for the ride.